I would love it, don't get me wrong. I mean, like, as a reviewer, like, we get PDFs, you know, from companies when they come out. I love reading comics like that. I don't need to read another issue in my life ever again, but not everybody else gets to do that. But I can obviously feel it there. Like, I want that.
James, you haven't spoken. Any thoughts? We're running out of time.
That's why there was a huge line out there.
No, I'm saying honestly, no, believe me, I know we got constant traffic. No, but any other thoughts, or should we move on to other time?
I'll jump in. I promise.
Okay, no worries. Should we move on? How about movies and television?
So what was your?
I have a different thing for the last 5 years. Something I find significant is the resurgence of non-Marvel DC image companies. You know, you have Boom, you have Radical, you have Dynamite, IDW. A lot of these are very viable concerns, and they're doing different things with comics. You know, there's different properties that can be brought to the comic form that wouldn't work at Marvel and DC. A good example, I was talking to Jimmy Palmiotti, this Time Bomb property that's coming out from Radical. You know, he shopped that around to Marvel and DC and several other publishers. They weren't interested because it doesn't fit their mold.
Right.
It's a really cool story. But, you know, Radical's there, and Radical can publish that for them. And I think that some of the things that, you know, Dynamite does with some of the, you know, public domain properties, and what Boom is doing with their various things in their kids line,
Archaea.
Ape and Archaea, and, you know, all these companies, they seem to, in the last 5 years, have gotten a little more relevant, even though the sales numbers are not necessarily there. They're putting out very valuable.
But we're measuring that by comic book stores, as opposed to, like, in the case of Boom, which has a license of things like the Muppet Books and Cars, and I'm sure their bookstore numbers are very competitive. And that is an area that I think it's harder to hunt for those numbers, but they're very significant numbers, and I think every company is very interested in what's happening, obviously, in the bookstores.
And that's a whole separate thing, is when you go with the different, you know, trades versus monthlies and stuff. But I just like the fact that we now have so many more genres that are out there than just superheroes. And they're out there if you want to look for them. Not every store carries them. You know, you can go into a lot of stores and they've got the top 20 or 30 selling Marvel and DC comics, and maybe a smattering of Dark Horse and Image and, you know, whatever. But it's hard to find some of these other really cool comics that are out there.
What is that thing? Is if we post about something on our site that's about the Avengers, people really respond. But if we post about a book or something like that,
Yeah.
and it's sad, it's awful. Like, I can sit there all day and be like, this book is amazing, it's so good, and no one cares, and it's heartbreaking.
You have a full-fledged community on your boards and on your website, and it's, you know, really the website came before the podcast. My podcast pretty much is the way I communicate with my audience. I have a message board, and I'm happy to engage in conversation. Mostly it's just kind of, hey, how you doing? And really stuff not involving comics or the podcast. It's really more other interests and stuff like that. You guys have a very active community. What about the rest of you, as far as what you guys do in terms of communicating via the podcast, through emails that you might read on air, or the message board and stuff? What kind of engagement with the audience do you have?
We have a forum on the comicbookpage.com website.
But I mean, is it like, well, I guess, as opposed to just, yes, I have a message board, I'm saying, like, what kind of...
It's a forum, and there's threads, you know, we talk about topics, you know, what do you think about this book? We have certain threads that are, you know, like, what kind of stuff are you looking forward to this month? If you see some news item that comes out on Newsarama or CDR, you put something up there and there's a discussion about it. So there's a dialogue going on with a segment of the listenership, although, and it's always great to have more people participate, but, you know, there's a lot of people that just like to listen to the show. They
Sure. Is it significant? But is it a significant portion of your audience?
It's probably not.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious.
You know, it's like that 10 to 20%.
What about you, Jim?
Yeah, I'm pretty similar, I'd say, because forums come and go. There's sometimes when our forums are just, you know, on fire, and other times when it's kind of desolate. And same with emails. We get tons sometimes when we go on phone. We certainly love it when we get it.
Sure.
And it's great to hear from people, whether they agree or disagree with us. It's always awesome to kind of go back and forth, and we try to reply to everybody. Usually do reply to everybody that does. And I think it's an important part when it happens. If it doesn't happen, it's okay. Because like you said, there are people that just enjoy listening. And they might have an opinion on the topic, but they don't care to write in, they don't care to call in. And that's okay.
Sure.
That doesn't sit back and listen.
I come from radio, so frankly, I like the idea of new media that the audience is engaged and active in participating in the program. But I really am kind of used to, here's especially for my show, which is an interview show, here's the interview. Thrilled that you guys had comments on it and everybody has suggestions and that. But yeah, I really am kind of used to the one-way 25 years of radio, so.
But you also use a lot of listener questions, I guess, on your.
Yeah, for only for certain, like, really people like Gail, Simone, and Dennis, that's what they really want. Like, oh, can we do a Q&A like that? And every now and then I'll throw things up. But honestly, I am kind of like, I kind of have a list of questions that I want to hit and stuff. And it depends, but mostly it's that rather than the other. So, Cammy, how about you?
Well, like I was saying, like if it's usually a lot of like just no conversation on forums, which are listed at the comics forums, the company speak guys. But the downloads and views like speak for themselves. Obviously, there are people out there who have some interest in it. The only time I'll ever get emails asking certain questions or whatnot, it's something. If someone disagrees with the review, or they have a question like, "Hey, what do you want to comment on?" Yeah. So usually when there's like no discussion whatsoever, it's usually they're just like, "Okay, I agree," or "I disagree."
In the audience, I'm curious, how many of you have podcasts yourselves? Show of hands. All right, I know, that's cool. So you're pushing out on days. That's all right.
So you just not want us to talk about random stuff?
No, and really, if anybody has questions, obviously you can line up and we'll go to questions at some point.
For in the last 5 years, what book or creator did you become aware of from your show, or from what anybody shows on the?
Jason Aaron.
Okay.
I mean, not from my show, but really from the other side, the book coming out. And Jason and Hickman, I would say, Jonathan Hickman and Jason Aaron, in the last specifically 5 years, because Fraction was slightly before I started that I became aware of him. But I'd say those three guys in particular are like the most interesting writers that I've encountered in the last 5 years. How about everybody else?
Well, I think I was always, like most of us, pretty avid collector, but I was pretty kind of heavy with, just a lot of superhero stuff and occasionally random things here from Dark Horse or whatever. But doing this show for the past 5 years, has really expanded me, and like I've opened up to the world of independent comics, and I champion it as much as I can. I love going to shows like SDX or Mocha. I tend to spend way more at those shows. Then I won't buy one comic book here because you can get it at a comic book store, most of them, unless you find some small press one. But at the really small press shows, you find fantastic all-around platform, or just random, so even a superhero story on the show, and it's great. It's open, not just these big names are great. I got through the cover with Tom Hickman initially, the Nightly News at the show. But because we do the show, we want to cover so much. We want to, there's so many different types that listen to the show that we want, each week I'll pick reviews and we'll have maybe all superhero books, and next week maybe all independent books. There's no rhyme or reason, but we've gotten emails like, oh, we hate Disney stuff, oh, we hate superhero stuff. That's fine. But it really opened my eyes to so many great creators, not just in print, but in webcomics. Like Katie Meek, my God, she's a rock star. She's amazing. A lot of people don't know who she is. HarperDavid.com, check her out. She's amazing. People like that. So it's probably never very awesome.
We should go down the road. Yeah, that's very good. Who in the last 5 years has inspired everyone, Ken?
When I first got started the whole reviewing, Umbrella Academy was about.
Awesome.
And so one artist in particular, David Obama.
Sure.
I was like, oh, this guy's awesome. And then I was like, what, he has a twin? And then you start doing research on it, you see Pixiu 5, you see like 1947 come out, and then Day Tripper more recently. Just emotional punch to the gut, like every issue. So just to be able to like put together the dots and like discover from different comic books and different graphic novels and whatnot, certain artists or like for me it's mainly artists. I really love finding like a new style. It like makes my week. Like writers are great too. Like they're obviously usually the opening act on the front cover there, but you find a lot of great artists like the Gabriel Vaughn.
Sure.
We do an indie book, kind of differing definitions of indie. What I consider indie and what indie spinner rack and maybe something else. I'm not looking at the Mocha stuff, but kind of those mid-tier publishers. And there's been a lot of books since we're trying to go through those each week, and we're trying not to do repeats, that we find just because of the show. One of the ones that really stands out for me is Richard Starkings and the crew that he has on Elephant Man. And in particular, if you look at an artist, is Justin Norman Moratad, who is now moved up and is doing the Spirit at DC. That guy's a fabulous artist. And I first noticed him on Elephant Man. But that's a great book, and there's just more than I can even think of that I found. Just the other day, I read the first issue of Sweets by Cody Chamberlain. Came out from Amsterdam. He's down at the Image booth now, and go and check that out. That was fabulous.
Answer your question.
Yeah, for me, I know he's been around for a long time before the show, but Terry Moore.
Sure.
When we started doing the pocketbook series book by book with Terry Moore, I went out and bought all the issues before we got to the end, and I'm reading Echo, and it's something that I'm just kicking myself for not reading it from the beginning. I was focused on just the superheroes, and just opened my eyes to the show. Terry Moore's just wonderful talent.
That's cool.
I use my excuses to, I use my show as an excuse to talk to people who I'm really interested in working with.
Exactly.
Like I'm a writer also, so like, can I talk to you for an hour about writing? That's awesome. That's what I do.
Yep.
I would say if there's anything on the show, I'll tell you, Dave Stewart, colorist, was
Sure.
on our show, and he wrote to me, he was like, I like the show, and I was like, you're stupid. What was you ready for? It was crazy. And he noticed that we never talked about Hellboy. He was like, I said, he sent me everything he'd ever done on Hellboy, and I read through it, and now, because of that, so then, like, I became a giant Manuel fan, and a Hootie fan, and Burrito, and Guy Davis. Guy Davis is the most eloquent storyteller working today. There's no doubt in my mind, like, and that's stuff that you don't see, you don't read this much, you know about it, because they don't do it.
Well, you see, it's funny because with Guy Davis for me, it was in industry theater. So well before I was doing podcasting, so I understand. I understand. No, it's interesting because really, like, much like Josh, I'm a writer guy as well. And that's why immediately my mind goes to the writers that are wonderful artists, already mentioned here and stuff. Certainly the brothers, Fabio and Gabriel are incredible. Mortad's awesome as well. All the guys that Richard gets for Elephant and stuff. But yeah, it is interesting. I think you can tell by listening really what our opinions are and what we like and everything. Because yeah, I'll admit my show is incredibly self-indulgent. I literally, I mean, it has to be something that interests me. I feel like a jerk because there are people that I've been introduced to. In fact, the iFanboy guys introduced me to Scott Lobdell last year at WonderCon. And that was during my blind spot, exactly. And I'm like, and you are, and that, and what did you do? And these X-Men families are, oh my God, Generation X, the Age of Apocalypse, the whole shot, Age of Future.
They had an opposite.
Yeah. Well, but yeah, I really felt like a jerk. And that's the thing, sometimes publishers will come to me, I don't know if you guys feel like it sometimes, where it's, hey, talk to my creator. And it's like, I gotta be honest, I'm into the book, so how about no? Seriously, it's like, I'm not I don't think I'm anything more than another fan, truly. And it's just that it's, like I said, the podcast is self-indulgent. It has to be to want to put it out every week, because I'm sure everyone would agree.
You co-host.
No, honestly, Chris, very quickly, I don't want to co-host because that's how I get to do the Bendis tapes because it's 2 o'clock in the morning, my time, and I know Brian is hanging out, and yeah, we can talk now. And it's like, okay, so we do. So no, it's much easier for me to produce. In fact, before I was going to do working as a podcast, I was going to make a documentary, and my video guy kind of flaked out on me. So I kind of went with do it yourself.
You don't want partners.
So yes, exactly. So you can test 10 years later. So
I think that's right, because when I do interviews,